Welcome, everyone, and thanks for tuning into this webinar for busy lawyers. These monthly webinars are designed to bring you practical information in 20 to 30 minutes that you can implement immediately in your practice. Today, I have the pleasure of introducing Brooke Moore. Brooke is the founder of My Virtual Lawyer, a virtual law firm providing limited scope services to litigants, individuals, and businesses. She's an ARC Bar Leadership alumni, Judith Ryan Gray Outstanding Young Lawyer recipient, ABA Law Practice Fellow alum, 2017 Women in Legal Tech honoree, and a 2017 Fast Case 50 Award recipient. Before I turn it over to Brooke, I'd like to let you know that we will have time at the end to take any questions you have. Just place your questions, write your questions in the chat box, and at the end of Brooke's presentation, I'll relay them to her. Brooke, take it away.
Thank you so much for the introduction, and thank you guys for joining me today. So there are different ideas and even some misconceptions out there about what a virtual law firm actually is and how it works. And you'll have to bear with me a little bit. I'm kind of getting over a cold, so I'll try to speak as clearly as possible in my very thick Southern accent. But so, how does a virtual law firm work? A virtual law firm is a law firm model that is going to utilize technology for the delivery of legal services to provide easier access to legal consumers and the flexibility to meet evolving consumer demand. So what is that going to look like? A virtual law firm is a real law firm, and I get asked that all the time. Are you a real law firm? Yes, it's a real law firm bound by the same procedural requirements and ethical rules as a traditional law firm model. The difference is just the delivery of legal services. So it's going to be an entirely web-based communicating and providing services by utilizing technology. The virtual law firm interacts with clients primarily through web-based software, video chat, Skype, phone, things like that. It's also going to be paperless, and the documents and information are going to be stored and disseminated electronically. So virtual lawyers also have the flexibility in where they physically work, when they work, and how they work. So that's a benefit on our end. And the virtual law firm is convenient for clients as well, but it's going to allow them to communicate with attorneys and staff at their convenience, and also to schedule consultations, attend appointments from the comfort of their own home, their office, and that's often going to save commute time and allow for minimal interruptions in their work schedule, their day, and their other commitments. And most importantly, in my opinion, the key requirement for a virtual law firm is that there's some sort of secure client portal in which the attorney and client can communicate and share documents, make payments, and store information. So I'm going to talk about client portals and cloud-based software in just a minute. But first, what a virtual law firm is not. So it's not simply e-lawyering, meaning that it's not simply communicating through email or utilizing technology to run your practice. And it's also not just another legal form company where you go to receive documents. Again, it's a real law firm where attorney-client relationships are going to be created and the same rules as a brick-and-mortar firm apply. It's not just a website, so merely having a presence online does not create a virtual law firm. And a virtual law firm not only has the web presence, but uses that presence to interact with clients throughout their legal matter. So it's not simply going to be someplace you go and there's an intake form or contact us and call to action. That's not going to automatically convert a firm into a virtual law firm. It's also not another cloud or software service. And although these services play a major role in providing services virtually, a virtual law firm does not serve the purpose of a software or a cloud-based legal services provider. So these are simply just tools that are used in a virtual law practice to provide your services. It's also not a remote office space. I know a lot of firms allow that option now. So it's not just being remote. That doesn't make you virtual. The virtual law firm is going to afford you that freedom to work remotely or telecommute. However, the fact that you're simply working somewhere away from a brick and mortar office does not make it a virtual firm. Again, the virtual component is going to refer to the ongoing interactions with your client throughout the representation. So because a virtual law firm is still a law firm, you are not going to be immune from ethical or practice obligations, in case anybody was wondering. So now that you have kind of a basic understanding of what a virtual law firm is and isn't, we're going to talk about how to start a virtual firm or implement a virtual firm. So first, you're going to need to refer to your state-specific rules. And one of the main things that you have to look at if you're considering doing a virtual law practice in your state is whether or not your state is going to require a bona fide office. And by a bona fide office, that definition varies from state to state also. So in some states, they require that you actually maybe have a physical office and be present in that state X number of days a week. Some states just require that you have a physical office listed. So you may never go into that office, but you still have to have a physical space, while other states don't require you have any kind of an office space at all. So that's very important when you're trying to determine whether you want to have a virtual practice, because you're going to have to consider that in your expenses and your overhead. Then you're also going to want to research ethical rules regarding the scope of the attorney-client relationship to help you determine what services to provide and how you can provide them. And finally, and this is especially true, I specifically do limited scope representation. And so if you're going to do any kind of a document drafting, transactional things where you're going to write for the client, you need to make sure and check the rules pertaining to ghostwriting in your state. Next, you need to check for any state or city operating licenses that are necessary, which this is all kind of basic when you're setting up a law firm or a business anyhow. So it's going to be similar to a traditional law firm. You're going to have to make sure that you filed all your business documents with the state, IRS, things like that. But you're also going to want to make sure that you get the appropriate city license if your city requires that. So for instance, here where I live, a virtual law firm is considered a home-based business. And so that's the city license that I have to get in order to operate from home here or from an office remotely or whatever. And finally, if you intend to practice in multiple jurisdictions, you need to be sure to review and understand the unauthorized practice of law statutes. Because again, as far as a bona fide office, the rules of practice, things like that are going to vary place to place. And being a virtual practice, you have a little bit more flexibility if you're wanting to extend into other jurisdictions. So that's just something else to consider. So after you've done your initial research, the next thing that you're going to need to do is to look for a law practice management cloud-based software solution that's going to best suit your practice. Now, there may be tools that you already use that you can connect using Zapier or some kind of connecting tool to talk and kind of string your practice together based on the tools that you're already using. You may even have the ability to create your own separate client portal, but I'm a big advocate for cloud-based software solutions that allow you to kind of have it all in one place. There's different things out there, Clio, Practice Panther, in my case, they're all great and they're all different in their own way. So you'll want to go look into the different solutions to see what's best for your practice. So for the next few slides, I'm going to kind of discuss what I believe are going to be the most important features to look for in a client portal whenever you're running a virtual practice. So first and foremost, it needs to be user-friendly. If not, it can make the process very difficult for your client, but it's likely going to also be more time-consuming for you because you're going to have to spend more time walking your clients through that. A lot of these software providers will have tutorials and things like that, and they also have back-end support for technical issues, but still your client is going to come to you first if it's not user-friendly. So that's really important. Also, you're going to need to make sure that it's secure and that communications are encrypted to minimize liability for confidentiality breaches. Most of the software providers, all the software providers that are specifically catered to legal services understand the security requirements that are placed upon us. So it's, usually a safe bet. I still would check into any, ask the hard questions, check into any kind of software they're going to use. But this is especially true if you're going to pull from other software that's not necessarily specifically designed for law firms. You're also going to want to choose a portal solution that offers document automation, and the ability to code your documents and extract that data is not only going to increase your productivity and efficiency, but it's also going to help reduce errors. So that's a huge time saver, and that's a benefit of being virtual and automating documents and having the law practice management software. You're also going to want to look for software that allows you to create invoices and gives you access to merchant service providers. A lot of times these providers will be included in the fee, so you're not having to pay an additional fee beyond your per transaction fee. And that way clients can conveniently make payments online. And you should have the flexibility to create the invoices with multiple payment types, schedules, payment plans, and also based on different billing models, flat fee, hourly, however you bill. Your client portal should be able to provide for messaging and other communication access so that your client has the ability to comment on documents or contact you directly with questions. So these client portals a lot of times will have a messaging feature that will directly connect the client with the attorney or the staff member that they're working with. And so, that's a huge benefit for your client, but you also keep everything in one place and you know that it's secure within that portal. So it's going to also allow yourself and your client to upload documents and exchange information there, again, all in one place. There should be a way for you to conduct conflicts checks throughout your database of cases and clients. Right now, the software that I've been exposed to, you have to go in and search. So what you're going to want to do if you're putting people in there, you're going to make sure that you have all of the information for any other parties that might be involved with the case, and they have ways to do that in these law practice management softwares. So it is beneficial to have as much in one place as possible. I think I've said that probably like 3 times, but so you're going to look for offerings that are going to integrate with other software and technologies that you're using. For instance, I use Clio right now, and for my intake, I use Intake 123. So I have the ability to go intake information, whether that's a questionnaire, that's basic information, whatever, and it will automatically extract and create a client in Clio and put that information in there. So when I go to pull maybe a common template and automate it, it's already going to have that information in there, and it's going to eliminate the need for me to, manually input those things more than one time. So it's important to make sure that your software has features that are going to be important for your practice, because everybody's practice is going to be a little different. You may want to have a calendar to keep track of hearing dates or deadlines for you or your client. You may find one cloud-based software service that's going to meet all of your needs, or you may have to combine several services. And again, if you need to combine services, it's important to pick some kind of solution that plays well with other software so they can communicate with each other. Like I said, Intake is separate from Clio, but they communicate with each other, so it makes the process and the workflow kind of flow more easily. So once you've chosen your client portal software, you're going to need to decide which services to provide. And I'm just going to kind of briefly touch on unbundling because the virtual law firm lends itself well to unbundling or limited scope representation services, which is what I do exclusively. And limited scope representation, if you don't know, is when an attorney represents or assists a party with part, but not necessarily all of his or her legal matter. So in this relationship, the attorney and the client enter into a detailed written agreement defining the scope of the legal assistance, including which tasks the attorney is going to be responsible for and which tasks the client will be delegated. So these services can include document drafting, giving advice, and in some cases, not ours, but some cases it's just maybe entering one appearance at a hearing. So I kind of say that because unbundling is in and of itself a transactional service, and a virtual law firm, transactional services, virtual law practices lend themselves well to transactional practices. I'm not saying that you can't do a litigation-based practice or other types of practice virtually, because you can. It may look a little different. The virtual part may just be a piece, because there are other pieces, obviously, that you're going to have to interact maybe in person or actually not be completely paperless. So it could still be a component of your practice, but definitely transactional is a good practice. Any kind of transactional practice, for the most part, is going to lend itself well to a virtual practice. So whether you choose to provide some or exclusively unbundled services in your practice, and again, I'm just going to touch on this briefly as far as unbundling, because a lot of the people that have approached me for virtual practices are interested in at least offering some form of unbundled service. So you want to be competent in the practice areas you're providing. I had traditional experience prior to unbundling the services I unbundled, so that helps you be a little bit more equipped to determine if the matter is suitable for limited scope. You should only unbundle if the case is suitable, so not all cases are going to be suitable. You should also be fluent in technology that you're working with, and that's all of us, not necessarily just, virtual lawyering or limited scope. We have a duty to be technologically competent in the technology that we're using and that our clients are using. So like I mentioned earlier, a lot of these cloud-based law practice management services actually have self-help videos and provide ongoing education and support for their products and services for free. So if you do sign up for one of those services, you're able to go in and they can, train you or train your team. Also, you want to ensure that your client has the capacity to use the technology that you're working with and that the client is competent to handle the tasks that are delegated. And that's going to be true even if you're not unbundling. So you want to make sure that they're technologically competent, but also if you're delegating them tasks to do through a client portal or virtually, you want to make sure that they have the ability to do that and also the access to the technology to do so. And most importantly, you're going to always want to clearly define in a limited relationship the task in a written agreement and provide notice when the services have been completed. So that being said, whether or not you choose to provide a virtual law firm model, there are benefits and risk to being fully virtual, or even partially virtual. So the benefits to a virtual law practice, especially a fully virtual practice, are going to be that you're going to have less overhead because you don't have that physical office space. And if you outsource and automate, you're not necessarily going to have to hire full-time staff, which being virtual and utilizing technology, a lot of times is going to give you the ability to automate or outsource. You also are going to have the flexibility to work where, when, and how you want. Your services are more easily accessible because your reach is far greater online than it's going to be in a physical space. So that's why earlier I talked a little bit about a multi-jurisdictional practice, because you have the ability virtually to serve. We started out serving the entire state of Arkansas, and then we actually moved into other jurisdictions, and you have the ability to do that a little more easily with a virtual practice. You also have the ability to not only automate documents, but to also more easily automate your intake and processes. And again, I think that's important in any kind of practice, whether it's a traditional brick and mortar practice or a virtual practice. It saves you so much time and it's more efficient when you can automate your practice and also your intake and your workflows. You can go paperless in a virtual practice. So going paperless, you're reducing expenses again and storing case information where it's more easily accessible than paper files. It's also less intimidating for most clients as opposed to a formal attorney-client meeting, and consumers are growing more comfortable conducting their business online. So I've actually gotten a really positive feedback over the 3 years that I've been doing this from clients of the ease of access and the ability to do things conveniently for them. So a virtual model can be more easily adapted to new processes than other changes, and again, has the ability to scale quicker. So you have the ability in a virtual practice to pivot a little bit easier. For instance, we review our software quarterly, and it's a little bit easier for us. Again, once we build things up and we have our workflows, it's obviously, a challenge to move things over. But being virtual, you can pivot those things a little bit easier than if you are in a physical traditional practice. So with automation and streamlining the processes, there's less margin for error, resulting in a decreased liability. But on the flip side of that, there are still risks in a virtual practice. One of those risks is privacy issues. So you're going to want to make sure that you're using a secure internet connection and that your communications are secured on your computer, tablet, or mobile device. So this is making sure yourself, your team, have very strong passwords, that if you're working at a coffee shop, that you're not using public Wi-Fi, things like that. So those are things you're going to want to watch out for. And the technology you choose should be secure and encrypted. And like I said, if you go with software that's developed specifically for law firms, they typically understand that, but you're going to want to check and make sure that, even your website, you want to make sure that it's secured. You want to make sure that things are not necessarily being stored, especially on a vulnerable website. If it's not secured, you're going to want to make sure it's transmitted to a secure place. And another reason I say that the client portal is important and I advocate for that is because a lot of people will use email. A lot of attorneys use email in their practice, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, but with email, most of the time you're not taking the time to make sure it's encrypted, because that's just a pain for everybody. And so that opens you up to liability too. But in the client portal, you know that it's there, it's easy, it's all in one place. You can go back and see your entire conversation, and you also know that it's a secure place to communicate. So another risk, you should be competent and knowledgeable of your technology. Again, a lot of times these software providers are going to give you tutorials, will walk you through it, walk your team through it. But if you're not competent, you could make errors, or you could have difficulty in communicating or interfacing with your clients. So you want to make sure that you are competent in your technology and using it correctly and safely. And again, you're going to want to be careful when you're taking your virtual practice into other jurisdictions. So I just made, these are kind of wordy slides, but I made a couple of slides for tips and advice and best practices for running a virtual law firm. So for virtual practice, I say update your business plan. I'm not talking about a long, detailed business plan, but your overall strategy, at least every 3 to 6 months, if not quarterly, because technology is constantly changing. And even if you have a software, that software provider is constantly updating and trying to create a better user experience. So you're going to want to evaluate that. And then as you start serving your clients, it's very likely your model is going to evolve, because you're going to learn from their reactions and your interactions with clients how your virtual practice needs to operate. Also, create an abbreviated business plan. Like I said, revisiting it regularly is going to keep you updated, and it's going to help you to better serve your clients. So when you're considering professional liability insurers and reviewing your current policy, you're also going to want to make sure you're covered for both cyber liability and the services that you provide, especially true if you're providing unbundled legal help. And right now, it's sometimes difficult for insurers I've run into the difficulty of insurers not wanting to quote me as a virtual practice, because it's an alternative model that they don't necessarily understand. So you're going to want to make sure they understand your practice and that you're covered. And I think as time goes on and the law firm model evolves, I expect, the quotes for virtual law firm policies to go down, and also for there to be a better understanding there. But right now, many of the insurers have had difficulty understanding the actual risk to assign to a virtual law firm when they're underwriting policies, because there aren't similar firms to compare to. Also, another tip, outsourcing is going to save you a lot of time and money. So there's several scheduling services. I use Acuity Scheduling for my clients to set their own appointments. And I also outsource to a call center to answer inbound calls and provide customer service there. So that saves me time and doesn't distract me. I think I heard the other day that it takes 23 minutes after you're distracted to fully get back into focus. So I believe that. And being able to outsource things helps you to focus and be more efficient on whatever you're doing, whether you're drafting or working with a client or whatever it is. So it's good also, even being virtual, to have an actual physical address for marketing purposes, because that makes you look legit on Google for some reason. So I have a UPS box, and it has a mailing address, a physical address. So I use that as a virtual space address for marketing purposes. Also, there's office share spaces that you don't necessarily have to be in person, but you can use their physical address. So that's important for marketing purposes. Of course, the same advertising and marketing rules are going to apply to virtual law firms as traditional practices. So you're going to want to make sure to pay special attention to your website content and consider providing disclaimer and privacy policies on your website, which a lot of people do that anyhow. Blogging consistently is going to help keep your content fresh and your website higher in the ranking and searches. Plus, it doesn't cost a lot to do that. So to illustrate the impact that blogging can have, and especially, like I said, in a virtual practice, I one time blogged daily for 10 straight days. And by day 11, I blogged on divorce. It was specifically just for divorce for 10 straight days. And by day 11, I had jumped from 64th in the search engine to 18th on Google for Little Rock divorce attorneys. And I hadn't put any ad dollars behind that or any other marketing. So not only does blogging help keep your content fresh, keep your website coming up there, keep you in front of people, but it also helps, depending on the style of writing that you do, it's also going to help you make that connection and make people trust you because you're giving information out. And that's a big part of being virtual. You want to make sure that even though you're virtual, you still make that personal connection. They can still trust you. They still know who you are. They know that you want to help them. And so that's a good way of doing that also, is just writing, giving information out there. Also, utilizing social media. It's a long-term game, but you can build a quality audience doing that. And that's a really good way to find people who are comfortable using virtual law firms and virtual services. If it makes sense to your practice, providing some kind of alternative fee service is not only easier administratively, but it results in fewer unpaid invoices, from what I found. And on this last slide, I created just a checklist to help you get started. So when you're starting your virtual law firm, again, you want to research the rules and regulations. You want to create and register your business entity. You're going to compare multiple malpractice insurers. You want to register a domain and create your website. Determine which cloud-based technology, software, and client portal you will use. And your client portal, scheduling system, and other technology should be integrated into your website. You want to create your business and marketing plan. And you want to draft intake forms, client agreements, disclaimers, policies, and all other automated forms and documents, and then start accepting clients. And just make it as user-friendly as possible. And that's it. So I can take questions.
Thank you so much, Brooke. That was such a terrific presentation. You just gave us a huge list of terrific tips for setting up a virtual practice. And while we're waiting for questions, a couple of things came to mind. One of the things that we can help you with at LOMAP is looking at different law practice management cloud-based solutions. So if you want information on that, please feel free to reach out to us. Also, for the intake forms, engagement letters, non-engagement letters, disengagement letters, we can help you with forms for that as well, which will make a difference for the virtual practice. So I heard a lot that was pretty interesting. I was wondering if you might want to say a little bit more about the ghostwriting issues and concerns that you mentioned early on.
Sure, yeah. As far as ghostwriting, here in my state specifically, you are not allowed to ghostwrite. So we have, what I've done from the start is at the bottom of any documents that I draft for litigation purposes, and mostly this is going to be family law things. So say, for instance, a divorce. At the bottom, I have a footer that says, this document was drafted with the assistance of Brooke Moore, with my virtual lawyer, pursuant to Arkansas Rule of Procedure 1.2C. So I put all that on the bottom of every document that I draft. So that way the court knows that they have had the assistance of an attorney. So I don't have to take an additional step. Again, I don't enter my appearance and we don't litigate, we don't attend hearings, but we are able to disclose that to the court there. Now, for a while, that is how we practice, and we just did that just as a good practice measure to disclose it to the court. Now, as of December or January, we have adopted rules here that specifically say this is how you should do it. So now that's how everybody has to do it if they're ghostwriting here. So, so that's good. And that's kind of, there are other states that have requirements like that. Some states don't. Some states require you to notify the court other ways. So you're going to want to look into your specific state. The other states that we've gone into, we have made sure that they either allow for ghostwriting or they will allow for them to ghostwrite the same way that we do by disclosing it in a disclaimer in the footer. So that's going to vary from state to state.
Great, very helpful. We have a question about which provider you're using for reception, phone call reception.
Sure. Yeah, I use Teledirect, and one reason I started there is because they were the only provider, and I called a million people, but the reason I started there is because they do block minutes, so you buy them by the block. what we mainly do is try to drive our traffic, from marketing or whatever to our website for them to directly sign up on our calendar through our website. But we also wanted to have the, back end support, because there are people that still want to call in, and we didn't want to have to be taking those calls. And so Teledirect can do that. And the extended services they do for us, they will answer calls, they will put people on our calendars, they will take messages, and that's what we use them for. There are a lot of options out there that offer even more. Teledirect offers a few more things too, but I liked it because it was a flat rate. You get a certain number of minutes on whatever plan you pick, and then when you run out, you just refill it. So I liked it, and it worked for my practice, but it's just going to depend on your practice.
And we have another question. Somebody writes that they noticed that on your own firm site, you don't say anything about the jurisdictions you work in. The first question is, why is that?
Right. That is because we have just recently expanded into these jurisdictions. So on our bio pages, we have just added the attorneys. We have 2 attorneys in California and 1 in Georgia right now. And then everyone else is in Arkansas. So we are going to, because that is a rule, once we start actually providing services, we do have to list which jurisdiction, at least in a couple of these states, we're going to have to list it. So we're going to list it for everybody, but which jurisdictions they're actually practicing in. So we haven't listed in the bios, but no, it will be listed on the site. And we're looking at different ways for people to go in under services. Say if you go to divorce, different ways to go in and click Arkansas or click Georgia. And right now, if you go to schedule a consult, you can click schedule a consult, and the drop down on there is going to list that on there. It's going to say Arkansas and have the list of the attorneys that are in Arkansas. It's going to say, it says that right now. It says Arkansas, California, and Georgia. So you can see which attorneys fall under there, so you can sign up on their calendar. But it's just because we have just taken the step to add these people on. So that will be on there more prominently.
And this question relates, have you had any difficulties controlling where your prospective clients are coming from?
Have I had any difficulties controlling where they are coming from?
Well, I guess it's how carefully can you control where they're coming from?
Like who is sending me, like what state they're coming from, I guess, to make sure that they're in the right jurisdiction. Am I understanding that correctly?
Here we are. No, I thought maybe we'd get a clarification. Yes, that's what she means.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because we talk to everybody that comes through. So if you sign up for a consultation, we're going to ask you where you're from, where you live. That's just part of it. So we don't have a piece where you skip over talking to an attorney. So if they call us and they get on my calendar and they need to be in Georgia, then I'm going to send them to our Georgia attorney. So, I have had people from other states contact me and ask if we help, but I haven't had any problems with people signing up and not being in the jurisdiction that they're supposed to be in.
Terrific.
But we vet that out front.
Yeah, and it sounds like your intake forms as well, kind of make that clear.
Right.
Yeah. I don't see any other questions, so I just want to thank you so much for sharing your time and advice with us. It was really, really great. We got a lot of good comments back saying, I just want you to know, great job, very informative, great presentation, thanks so much. So you really hit the ball out of the park on this one. Thank you. I want to let everybody know that we're going to be providing a recording and the slides on our website probably within the next few weeks as soon as we can. So if you missed any part of this, tuned in late, or you had to leave early, they will be there for you, or you want to share with your friends. So I want to thank you for tuning in today and let you know to mark your calendars for next month's webinar, which will be on May 30th, when Ann Bradford will be joining us with quick tips to beat stress, build happiness, and boost performance. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in today, and have a terrific afternoon.